later. Okay, and we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to share the American flag, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Give me a second to share my screen. I'm bad at this. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stand. If you want, you can stand. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, now I'll figure out how to stop this. All right. Are we back to normal screen now? Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, tonight, my Democrat friends, we have Jason Bollinger, candidate for U.S. Senate. He is going to be in the primaries with Madison Horn, the candidate with which we spoke last month. So I think this is a really good kind of bookend to get to hear both of them back to back. Like this. Jason didn't get to meet with us in person today, obviously, because of the weather, but we are going to hopefully work with him to get him up here sometime later this spring so that you guys will get a chance to meet him in person, shake his hand, ask him the questions that you want to ask in person, that kind of thing. So don't worry, you're not getting robbed of anything tonight. You're just going to actually get an extra helping of Jason later because of this weather. So you win, ding, ding, ding. Let me go ahead and read an intro about Jason, and then we will let him speak at the end. We will kind of do some in-house, stuff that we always take care of kind of at the end, go over our bank account and talk about meeting schedules and upcoming events and stuff like that. So tonight, Jason Bollinger is with us. He's a lifelong Oklahoman, born in Elk City and raised in rural Oklahoma. His hometown of Carter, a population of 300, is where he learned small town values such as hard work that are responsible for his success today. His parents were a city manager and a public school teacher. Jason began his career by mowing lawns to earn money, eventually attending the University of Oklahoma, where he would earn a bachelor's degree in accounting and go on to receive his law degree. After working for the U.S. State Department, he established his own law practice in downtown Oklahoma City. As a senator, Jason believes that his time in Washington will provide him a unique insight into the machinery of government, so he may put it to work for the average Oklahoman. Jason's platform includes providing affordable health care through expanding accessibility to health care in rural areas, breaking up the monopoly of the health insurance market, reducing the cost of prescription drugs, and reducing the cost of critical care. Jason seeks to improve our infrastructure, which has been largely ignored by Oklahoma's congressional delegation. He understands the unique challenges of developing an infrastructure that works for everyone, as he watched his father attempt to overcome these same challenges as a rural city manager. He seeks to improve public education by protecting it from the intrusion of federal mandates and efforts to defund it. Jason believes in fully funding our public schools so they may possess the tools necessary to educate the future of Oklahoma. He also seeks to improve the security of our borders as part of a robust national security strategy. Washington County Democrats, please help me welcome candidate for U.S. Senate, Jason Bollinger.
All right, well, thank you, Eric, and that was a wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be here with you all and regret that I couldn't be there in person. I was looking forward to getting up there this evening. And hopefully it'll be a little bit warmer. I think we were talking about in May coming up there, and so that'll be a good time to come up to Northeast Oklahoma. As Eric said, I grew up in the complete opposite side of the state. I grew up in Beckham County, in Carter, and Carter is a small town between Mangum and Elk City. Not sure if you're familiar with the area, but Carter didn't have a school, and so I went where my mom was a teacher, to Merritt, which is actually in Elk City. Went through all 13 years of school there, and then went on to got my associate's degree at SWASU, and then my undergrad and law degrees at OU. But just Following that, I worked for a time at the U.S. Department of State in the Office of the Legal Advisor, working on a variety of issues from NAFTA claims, worked on arbitration under the conventions governing international aeronautics. And then the majority of my work was involving the Iran-US Claims Tribunal. And so that, if I'm not sure if you're familiar with that body, but it was formed following the Iran hostage crisis. And this was back in the early 80s. And to litigate disputes about assets held in the United States that were owned by the Iranian government or Iranian nationals, or US assets in Iran, following the end of diplomatic relations between the two countries. And so the tribunal was formed now over 40 years ago, and it's over time they've gotten through these cases. You all are probably familiar with during the Obama administration when we dropped the pallets of cash in Iran as part of the Iran nuclear deal. That was the office I worked in. So it was a very interesting time. I learned a lot. Got to travel to The Hague for litigation with the Iranians, and it was a unique experience to sit in the same room with Iranians, as that's the only diplomatic channel we have with Iran, as they are our sworn enemy and a terrorist state. So it was a very unique experience. But a lot of what I learned there, I was actually reflecting on it this morning, really prepared me for this time and the things that need to be addressed by our next United States Senator. I mean, a country that we consider an ally was attacked yesterday, and countering aggression from a ruthless leader like Vladimir Putin is going to require expertise at every level of our government. And so I'm really excited for the opportunity to bring my background to the table in the United States Senate. I think there is space on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. You know, there's Homeland Security. There are tons of issues where I can bring my experience outside of all my other experience, but just what I learned while working at the State Department to benefit our country there. So many reasons that I got into this race. You know, reason number one is because besides my time in Washington, D.C., it was a little over a year in D.C. and then in The Hague that I was gone from Oklahoma. But other than that, I've lived here my whole life and have built my life and my career here. Part of the reason that I decided to get into this race was seeing, both when I worked in DC, seeing the actions of our federal delegation there, and then coming back home and seeing what's being done here, how detached from people and how detached from reality these folks are. There is so much that the federal government can do and should do to help everyday Oklahomans, but it may not be they may not view it to be as politically advantageous, or, you know, there may be other things that their out-of-state donors want them to do that take priority. And so that was reason number one that I decided to get into this, was just being so frustrated with our current leadership and seeing that they're out of touch with the needs of everyday Oklahomans. And I also think we have an opportunity here to allow sort of the next generation to take up the helm and to lead. You know, the world is not the same as it was when Senator Langford was a child, and certainly not when Jim Inhofe was a child. The issues that we face today require new ideas and new skills to tackle these challenges. And so I think I bring a unique perspective to the table, both being a lawyer and having worked in international affairs that could really benefit the country. And I also have a unique perspective, having, I grew up in far southwest rural Oklahoma, and then lived in Washington, D.C., have lived in Oklahoma City now for about 10 years. And so have a unique background where I can connect with and understand the needs of people from all around the state and country. And so really that, plus just seeing the way that our government and particularly our Republican leadership is moving us further and further to the right and into dangerous territory with their extremism. And Senator Langford in his own primary, as I'm sure you all have seen, is going to continue to be pushed further and further to the right. And that creates an opening for someone who is willing to bring common sense to the table, for someone who's willing to work hard, for someone who is able and willing to listen to everyday Oklahomans and to advocate for their needs. And so all of those reasons, and then just seeing how much work there is to be done and how little recognition or focus it receives, brought me to run for this seat. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm happy to answer any questions you all have, and look forward to having happy to have one-on-one conversations, but just looking forward to getting to know all of you.
Thank you. I would just like to start the questions off by asking you to kind of explain or expand on your ideas surrounding healthcare and how you imagine expanding access to that, like what that looks like, and what we could kind of expect from that.
Sure. So I think in the approach to healthcare, it's two pieces. One, when I go back home, or I say home, where my family still lives in rural Western Oklahoma, I see just how many of our rural hospitals and clinics have closed due to SSM Health came in and bought several and consolidated them in one town. And it's due to lack of resources, but the need is still there. In fact, there's a greater need now with, generally the people who live in our rural areas are a little bit older than those who live in our metropolitan areas. And so there's a greater need for healthcare and access to healthcare there. And so one part of this is expanding access in our rural areas. And I think that is tied to the rest of our infrastructure needs. But also the cost of healthcare is something we've got to tackle. And I think it's also related to expanding access in rural areas. These are all intertwined. But a main issue I see we have here in Oklahoma, which drives up cost, and it also restricts access, is the monopoly on our insurance industry. I am 29 years old. I'm a small business owner. I'm healthy, have had no issues. Just for health insurance, without dental insurance or vision insurance, it's $500 a month to insure me. And that's because I have one option to choose from, and that is Blue Cross Blue Shield. I don't know if any of you have experienced anything similar, but just so you know, it's not this way in every other state. We have to apply antitrust regulation to our insurance industries. It makes no sense that we allow these industries to control an entire market here in Oklahoma, especially when it comes to a critical need like healthcare. And so competition breeds lower prices. And so if we can drive up competition in the insurance industry, that drives down the cost of prescriptions, it drives down the cost of procedures, and it puts money back in taxpayers' pockets to invest in their local communities.
Thank you. Is there anybody who has a question for Jason before I mean, I've got like a list, so I could go on all day, but I just want to let you guys get in here with something. I know John's not here. He's usually got the real juicy ones, but he's having some internet issues tonight.
Oh no.
He's not with us tonight, but I'm sure if he's got real questions that don't get answered tonight, you can expect an email. He's
Good. I
that
look
kind of
forward
guy.
to
So.
it.
Well, if no one else has a question, I'll just move on to my next one. You were talking about your experience in the State Department, and
Mhm.
also kind of you mentioned the invasion of Ukraine yesterday. I know personally this has been weighing on me. I'm upset about it. I am, I'll admit I'm disappointed in our reaction and how we've responded to this. And so I'm curious, since Congress does have the authority to declare war, this is something that we would expect a senator to have an opinion on. And so I'm curious, what are your opinions on the situation that's unfolding right now?
So this is obviously, and this is not I'm not working around your answering your question, but this is obviously a complex issue. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. Generally, if a NATO nation was attacked like Ukraine was, Article 5 of the NATO Charter would be invoked and we would be at war. Just similarly as the UK was when the US was attacked in 2001. But that's not the case. And so it's a touchy balance between supporting our ally, which is a lowercase a ally and a capital letter ally in NATO. And so as soon as Russia steps across into Poland, Lithuania, any of those others that are border nations that are NATO members, you can count on we will be there. But we still, as a democracy building and supporting country, I feel have an obligation to support Ukraine and defending itself. And we've been doing that silently. We've provided helicopters and arms and tanks and missiles and all kinds of things. But it would, so to take a step back, what Russia did was an act of war, and it violated international law. But because Ukraine is not a NATO member, we don't get involved, and that's really difficult to accept. And so I think we have to take other steps besides just going to war with Russia. I think that is a very dangerous path, and I do support the president in not taking that path because we are two nuclear powers, obviously. So what do we do then to help Ukraine? We supply them with arms. We sanction Russia. Those are the options that are left on the table. Unfortunately, in this circumstance, Russia was prepared for this and so had been stockpiling the resources that it knew we would sanction. So that is the US dollar, that is certain natural resources that Russia may purchase from the United States or European nations that would buy into our sanctions. And at the end of the day, absent sanctions and absent actually going to war on behalf of Ukraine, it's not a good answer, but there is not a lot we can do. But if your question was what would I be doing in the United States Senate at this moment, a sanctions package like we've never seen before is called for here. We know that the items that Russia has stockpiled due to our own intelligence, and so we need to be sanctioning the things that they need. We need to be issuing targeted sanctions on the oligarchs surrounding Putin and Putin himself. Putin should not be able to leave Russia and go to a neighboring nation that is an ally of ours, or an ally of an EU nation, or an ally of any member of NATO. It kind of has to be a piecemeal approach, but we have to make Putin regret this action. And I think ultimately he will. Unfortunately, this can't be done without affecting Americans, because sanctions ultimately hurt us, because prices of goods that may that Americans may buy from Europe, or maybe even directly from Russia, go up or are no longer available. It also hurts everyday Russians who may not support their leader, who we all know was not elected democratically. So there is a delicate balance here, and that's why you've seen probably not as fierce of a response from the current administration that we would like to see. And I agree with you on that. Where I disagree with the current administration on the approach is, we had this intelligence this entire time. If you've been watching the news, they've said for weeks that this is going to happen. We just weren't sure when. We should have had something prepared. The administration should have been working with Congress to get something prepared to issue immediately when this happened. This happened last night. It was, if I remember right, it was around 8-9 o'clock last night. It should have happened immediately. I am disappointed that didn't happen. And I don't know if that's due to consternation between the Democrats and Republicans. But I know that the Republicans had a bill. I know that the Democrats had a bill, but it seems like they weren't coordinating with the White House. And that's really unfortunate, because we all knew this was coming down the pipe.
So, like, if we have a military that's not going to act, my next question then is, how do we justify spending the hundreds of billions of dollars we do every year? I was thinking about just today that in the last 30 years since the Soviet Union fell apart, we have easily spent trillions of dollars on our military. And the message that even Democrats have bought, and myself included, has been, we do this so that we will never have to face a threat like the USSR ever again.
Right.
And yet here we are with a country with less than half the number of people that ours has, that is woefully poor compared to us.
Oh, yeah.
With, why are we being held hostage again? So my question, I guess, then to you would be, what is your stance on the military then?
Yeah.
I mean, what does it serve if we're not going to use it to defend democracy until, it's literally knocking on our door, the danger, So that, I guess that's my question. Where is the military spending justification then at that point?
Sure. And it is hard to reconcile, especially in this situation where we're dealing with a non-NATO ally country. And, to go a step further, it's even more unfortunate to see that Ukraine has literally begged NATO to let them in. And the only reason we haven't, and I say we, meaning NATO, hasn't let Ukraine in is because of Russia. I mean, we all knew this was going to come to a head eventually. The Ukrainians knew it was going to. But as far as military spending, so much of it is deterrence. And, to a certain extent, I think deterrence serves a purpose. So many, whether it's a nation state, whether it is a terrorist organization, they don't want to mess with the United States because we have nuclear weapons, because we will easily overpower anything they could bring to the table. The problem I see with military spending is, one, there is very little audit or check and balance on the system. And so it's basically the president asks for it and Congress says yes every single time. And when the president asking for it, it's the Secretary of Defense telling the president, or some other one of the joint members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff asking for it, and there is no question. And so, and also the needs of the military are so complex that sometimes you literally need experts to explain to members of Congress what they're appropriating for. They don't, if you're not an expert in armaments, it's hard to understand what they're even asking for. And so, one, I think because we do spend so much on funding our military, and it's such a huge part of our budget, it makes a lot of sense to have some kind of independent commission that is auditing constantly the military and what's happening to our arms. I mean, you just think about all that we left in Afghanistan when we just up and left. It's such a waste, and a lot of it we did, tear apart and disassemble so that the Taliban wouldn't use it, but then it's just wasted. And so I think our government as a whole, but the military is a great example, we have to, cost savings has to be part of the objective in everything we do. I am a strong Democrat. I've always been a Democrat, but my accountant brain, which is what I was before I was an attorney, that's nearly the first question that enters my mind in everything we do. And so when I'm looking at infrastructure spending, when I'm looking at raising the debt limit, anytime we're increasing the deficit, that the question of do we really need this, who's this going to serve, is number one in my mind.
I see, Christy, your hand is raised.
Yeah, one of the things that seems to be a problem with this whole NATO thing is that somehow we've let Russia and China both in NATO. So we can't, and they're the aggressors.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole premise of NATO seems to be convoluted at this point.
You're right in that we've used NATO as a bargaining chip with both Russia and China, and so while they're not members, they are effectively helping guide decisions made by the member nations of NATO. And in a if Ukraine was a NATO member, this current situation would have been avoided. Now, do I think there would have been major repercussions for the United States if Ukraine was allowed to accede to NATO? Absolutely. We would have seen cyber attacks like we've never seen before. We would have seen attacks on our electrical grid. Things like that. Sanctioning, Russia always threatens to cut off the supply of oil and natural gas to our European allies. That's something that where they have their finger on the trigger. So I think the answer to this is we have to, the United States and our allies have to work to become independent of Russia and of China. That's the only way to, in international affairs, to take power away from a country like that, is to no longer need them or what they provide.
Does anybody else have a question? Well, we've got to pause. I've only got one more good one teed up, so no. Okay. My last question has to do with the national security component of your campaign. You had mentioned, the border security, and I was wondering if you could just talk about, in general, the security package that you're kind of looking at, but specifically what the border security means for your campaign.
Sure. So we hear a lot from Republicans, and if you watch Twitter at all, you see that James Langford loves to run around at the border at night, videoing himself. Not sure what he's doing there, but we do have an immigration crisis in this country. I won't go as far as to say that we have a crisis at the border, other than the one that's been manufactured by Republicans and mostly in the previous administration. I've been to the border and seen the portions of the wall that were built during the Trump administration, and Langford is big on pushing to have the wall completed. Well, the wall's not going to be completed. I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of miles of a steel barrier across private land. In many cases, it's not all owned by the U.S. government. And right now, there are portions of the wall that are completed, but you go a mile down the way and you can just walk around it. And so much of the crisis has been manufactured by Republican pundits and Republican politicians. But where I see the crisis actually lying is in the way we process those who wish to come to the United States legally. First of all, our system of asylum is not in line with international law, international humanitarian law. The fact that we now, and our courts have unfortunately reversed the Biden administration's changes to this policy. We don't allow folks to come to the United States and seek asylum. They have to seek asylum from their home country where they are in danger, and where they're trying to leave. That's a problem for obvious reasons. Also, just the path to legally immigrate to this country is far too convoluted, far too complicated, far too expensive for anyone who doesn't have resources to do it the right way. And so, Republicans love to say, well, they're criminals. They came here illegally. They should never be granted amnesty. They should never be allowed to become a citizen. Well, I would like for any one of those Republicans to try to go through the process of becoming a citizen of this country. I'm a lawyer. I've done some business immigration work and helped my clients who are companies bring an employee with a certain skill from another country. It is an extremely complex situation. It typically costs $20,000 to pay a lawyer to fill out the paperwork for you. It takes about 9 months to get it done. And so without having resources, it's impossible. And so we leave people with no option when they're literally escaping crime, they're seeking healthcare, whatever reason they're seeking a better economic opportunity. We leave them with no option. And I think we've forgotten here in the United States how much we benefit from immigration. We currently have an employment crisis. There are so many jobs unfulfilled that could be filled by these folks who are wanting to come here and work. They would gladly take them. And yet we make the process too difficult, or once they're here, we send them back. That makes absolutely no sense to me. And immigration is one of those issues that is divisive. It's one that is extremely complex, and it's something that is fluid and evolving with time. And so a lot of times it gets brought up, but then it goes to the wayside and it's not made a priority. And we get so upset when we see something bad happen at the southern border, and then the media goes away from it and we don't care about it anymore. But immigration is vital to not only our obligations from a humanitarian perspective, but also vital to our economy. And so I think we have to tackle this on two fronts, both streamlining the process of immigrating legally to this country, but also it is also important to be sure that we have systems in place to properly vet folks when they're coming to the United States. I don't say that we should just open the floodgates and let everyone in. We want to make sure that we are performing background checks, that we are checking with relatives, things like that, to ensure that we are safe. But long story short, building a wall with an opening a mile down the way is not going to do it. And that's what James Langford is a proponent of doing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any questions? Just raise your hand.
I have a question.
Yeah, Rebecca.
I'd like to ask. My question is one that we like to ask everybody around here, which is, what's your strategy in such a red state to
Sure.
get enough votes to actually win?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you all have been watching the news today, but there are going to be 2 Senate seats open in Oklahoma in November. And so I like to think that we are going to pull off a Georgia here in Oklahoma. We have an opportunity for a Warnock-Ossoff moment here in Oklahoma, and we can do it. If Georgia can do it, there's no reason we can't. But as far as the strategy, I've lived in Oklahoma my whole life. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's our ground game. And I think that's something that Democrats have been weak on in the past. It's so easy as a Democrat running statewide to spend all your time in Oklahoma City and Tulsa and a little bit of time in Lawton, spend some time in Norman, And it, that's, you can have some kind of fundraiser in one of those cities and everyone tells you you're wonderful and writes you a check and you go home. But the real work is done and the changes made in reaching these people who are toward the middle and explaining to them why we're all actually on the same page and want the same things, and getting away from the extreme talking points. And our strategy as far as the areas we're going to target to do that, what better set of data do we have than our Medicaid expansion data? I mean, that showed us that there are precincts around the state that are where people are willing to move away from straight party voting and vote based on the issue. And in my case, vote based on the person, rather than just sticking with the party line. And so we've got precincts all around the state where we know that people are willing to do this. And so we're going to hit those hard.
Any other questions for Jason? No questions. Jason, if we were to think of a question that we had later, we just had to email you for an answer, how could we get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, email, the email is easy. It's campaign@jasonforoklahoma.com. And that is FOR, not the number 4. And so please do go on the website, jasonforoklahoma.com. I've got a list of issues there that are part of our platform. Of course, it's not an exhaustive list. There is so much work to do. Also, as I'm sure you all know, money is critical to a statewide race like this, and we're working to raise money every day. And so there's a donate button on the website. You can also go to jasonforoklahoma.com/donate, and it'll take you there. Any amount, whether it's $10, $50, whatever you can do really helps us. But please do feel free to email me. I look at the emails that come in every day and I respond to them. Our office phone number is on the website. Feel free to call us if we don't answer right away. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. I really look forward to engaging with all of you. That's the only way I'm going to learn all of the needs of various groups around the state, is by talking with you and learning. I grew up in Southwest Oklahoma and I've been to Northeast Oklahoma a few times, but I need you all to tell me what you need. So I'm looking forward to having these discussions.
Great. Well, we look forward to meeting you in person, hopefully in May. But if that doesn't work out, sometime before the primary for sure. Thank you again, Jason, for coming and speaking with us. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts about your campaign with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate all your thoughtful questions. One thing I forgot to mention, on the website, there is a contact button. If you will sign up there, you can either sign up to be on our email distribution list, or you can sign up to volunteer. We need volunteers all across the state. So please do that and sign up to receive our emails to stay up to date with us. And I look forward to meeting you all in person soon.
Thank you, Jason. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so just really quickly, we're going to kind of run through our nuts and bolts. I don't want to keep you guys late. I swear this will take like 10 minutes tops. Our vice chair is not here with the financial report, so I will give it instead. Give me a moment to find my number. Our bank account stands at $3,130.69. Our next officer meeting will be on March the 16th. That's a Wednesday, and those, even though those are for officers, just so you know, anybody can attend those. So just let us know if you ever want to attend. I'm happy to share that link out with you guys. If you're interested in seeing us talk about the really boring stuff, you're totally welcome. The next meeting will be on March 31st at 7 p.m. at the Bartlesville Public Library. It'll be in person unless, the newest variant of COVID comes along, or a freak blizzard, or whatever decides to get in our way next
Don't be
month.
like tornado warning.
Oh my
that night, right?
God, we've had the worst luck, my fellow Democratic friends. So hopefully March we will turn the corner. Joy Hoffmeister will be our guest speaker. And we are working with the Madison Horn campaign to get her up here so that you guys can meet her in person as well on that date. But that's to be determined for sure. Let's see here. We will be starting, John Weston is going to be working with Karen as our affirmative action officers. They are now tasked through our state or our new bylaws to kind of spearhead our voter registration efforts. So if you are interested in volunteering right now for anything other than a campaign, you need to email John Weston. His email is foreverblueokie@gmail.com. That's foreverblueokie@gmail.com. And if you email him, he will help you, get involved with the voter registration efforts that we'll be having. We'll also be talking soon about our summer events, doing like, sitting at booths and stuff. The exciting thing about having candidates engaging us right now is that we may actually be able to approach some of them about coming and spending time at our booths during like Sunfest, much like the Republican candidates often do, much to our chagrin. So it would be nice to have some Democratic representation there. So again, we'll be probably working with John a lot. He's like our super volunteer, and he really wants to be involved in our summer activities slate. So probably look at getting in touch with him if you're interested in working with that. I think that that's all that I've got for this month. It's a pretty light month as far as activities are concerned. Do you guys have any questions, or is there any announcement that you have that needs to be shared that I'm just forgetting? Any events that are online that I'm just ignorant of? I am very excited, just as a personal note, about the VA hospital that's being built here in the old Hastings building. I got really excited when I saw the article in the paper this week. So if you don't know anything about that, do go check out the information about that. That's really exciting for our community. Okay, if there are no other questions, then I'm going to call the meeting to end at 7:45. You guys have a great month, and I will see you guys in March. Have a happy Mardi Gras and a great St. Patrick's Day. Bye, Democrats.